Are you? What's happening?
Yes, correct.
I'll take two big friends. Friends, how are you?
Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you very much for your invitation.
Thanks for accepting.
I'm only sitting here doing this because Dear Govinda is likes to ask people to stretch. So this will stretch for me.
I am no good. Yeah, we understand. You didn't like enthusiastically, proactively volunteer. You've accepted the invitation.
So we're continuing in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 4, Vidura approaches Maitreya.
I did press it.
So it's text 25, 26.
26. Yeah.
You go through the Sanskrit?
Typically we do. Yeah.
Udavo vacha nanute tattva samradhya nanute tattva samradhya rishi kosharavon Rishi Kosharavantike Sakshad Bhagavata Disto Sakshad Bhagavata Dristo Martya Lokam Jihasata Martya Lokam Jihasata Guru Vacha Madhurite Tattva Samradhya Rishi Kosha Ravantike Sakshad Bhagavata Isto Martya Lokam Jihasata Guru Vacha Madhurite Tattva Samradhya Rishi Kosha Ravantike Sakshad Bhagavata Disto Martya Lokam Jihasata
Udava vacha nanute tattva samradhya Rishi Kosharavantike Martya Lokam Jihasata
Udavavacha Nitetatvasamvaya Shikosharavodinke Sarvata Vishnu
Udavavacha
Anyone else?
Perhaps someone online would like to recite the verse.
Someone online would like to recite?
Maybe not.
Uvacha
Udavavacha
Nanu te tattva samradya
Nanudetatvasamvaya
Rishikasa Ravontike Takshat Bhagavatadisto Martya Lokam Chihasata.
Anyone else? Udava vacha. Udava said. Nanu. However. Te of yourself. Tattva samradya. One who is available for reception of transcendental knowledge. Rishi, learned scholar. Kosharava. Unto the son of Kusharu. Maitreya. Antike. Staying nearby. Sakshat. Directly. Bhagavata. The personality of Godhead. Ista. Instructed. Martyalokam. Mortal world. Jihasata. While quitting. To the Prabhupada's translation and purport. Sri Uddhava said, you may take lessons from the great learned sage Maitreya, who is nearby and who is worshipable for reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by the personality of Godhead while he was about to quit this mortal world. Sri Uddhava said, you may take lessons from the great learned sage Maitreya, who is nearby and is worshipable for reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by the personality of Godhead while he was about to quit this mortal world. Purport. Although one may be well versed in the transcendental science, one should be careful about the offense of Maryada Vyatikrama, or impertinently surpassing a greater personality. According to scriptural injunction, one should be very careful of transgressing the law of Maryada Vyatikrama, because by doing so, one loses his duration of life, his opulence, fame, and piety, and the blessings of all the world. To be well versed in the transcendental science necessitates awareness of the techniques of spiritual science. Uddhava, being well aware of all these technicalities of spiritual science, advised Vidura to approach Maitreya Rishi to receive transcendental knowledge. Vidura wanted to accept Uddhava as his spiritual master, but Uddhava did not accept the post because Vidura was as old as Uddhava's father, and therefore Uddhava could not accept him as a disciple, especially when Maitreya was present nearby. The rule is that in the presence of a higher personality, one should not be very eager to impart instructions, even if one is competent and well-versed. So Uddhava decided to send an elderly person like Vidura to Maitreya, another elderly person. But he was well-versed also because he was directly instructed by the Lord while he was about to quit this mortal world. Since both Uddhava and Maitreya were directly instructed by the Lord, both had the authority to become the spiritual master of Vidura or anyone else. But Maitreya, being elderly, had the first claim to become the spiritual master, especially for Vidura, who was much older than Uddhava. One should not be eager to become a spiritual master cheaply for the sake of profit and fame, but should become a spiritual master only for the service of the Lord. The Lord never tolerates the impertinence of Maryada Yati Krama. One should never pass over the honor due to an elderly spiritual master in the interests of one's own personal gain and fame. Impertinence on the part of the pseudo-spiritual master is a very risky, impertinence on the part of the pseudo-spiritual master is very risky to progressive spiritual realization. The verse again, Sri Uddhava said, "You may take lessons from the great learned sage Maitreya, who is nearby and who is worshipable for reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by the personality of Godhead while he was about to quit this mortal world." Earlier in this chapter, it describes how Vidura, how Uddhava had approached Krishna when he was preparing to leave the planet, to finish his pastimes. And he was speaking, and Uddhava was a close friend of Krishna. He is actually described as a pure devotee, whereas although Maitreya is very learned, realized person, Uddhava is a pure devotee. He's a different platform. But while Uddhava was speaking with Krishna, he was asking him questions, expressing, he had some doubts about controversial things about Krishna, being self-satisfied. Why does he have so many wives in this world? Why did he have to lift up Govardhan Hill? And why did he display these things if he's self-satisfied and complete? So he was approaching Krishna, asking these things, and while Krishna was speaking, Maitreya was there, and it's described how Maitreya was nearby. He was hearing these things, but Krishna's attention was on Uddhava, because Uddhava he's a topmost pure devotee. So in this case here, Vidura, he is, the last few verses, he is approaching, Vidura is approaching Uddhava for initiation. And because Maitreya was there, Uddhava did not want to commit this technicality of Maryada Yati Prama, which means accepting a disciple or giving someone instruction in the presence of a superior. And Maitreya was the most, he was elderly. And that way he was superior. Prabhupada describes in the purport how they were both qualified because they had both heard from Krishna. So this brings to mind a few things, like we hear right inside the cover of the Bhagavatam. We say Sukadeva Goswami, he was actually the youngest in the whole assembly. There's so many great sages there. You know, his own father was there, Vyasadeva, but Sukadeva Goswami was asked to speak because he was a different situation. And another one that comes to mind is in the pastimes of Lord Rishabdev, he instructs his sons that one should not become a mother, a father, a teacher, or a guru unless he is qualified to deliver his dependents from the cycle of birth and death. So we know to become a spiritual master, there's many qualifications. One has to be very learned. There's qualifications, and that we sing every morning, these Gurvastakam, 8 prayers, and these are actually the 8 qualifications of a spiritual master. Samsara Dava, his words have to be like rain on a forest fire. Like all of us, at least for myself, in the material world, our material life is like a burning forest fire. There's even the closest relationships in this world, a parent, a mother and a child, sometimes there's friction, and just like in a forest, there's friction, and all of a sudden there's a forest fire out of nowhere. So in this world, there's so much friction, and a spiritual master, bona fide spiritual master, his words put out the fire like a rain. Like when Prabhupada speaks on that verse, he says, when there's a forest fire, you cannot use the bucket brigade. You have to have rain clouds. And a spiritual master will never say, I am the ocean of mercy. He says, I'm like a cloud. He's carrying water from the ocean. Spiritual master never claimed. So his words have to extinguish the fire of material life. And Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita, spiritual master is always instructing the disciples and to chant the holy names of the Lord and about Kirtan, Mahaprabhu's Kirtan. Just like this Kirtan we just had a few minutes ago. This is Krishna's mercy, Harinam Sankirtan. This is, Prabhupada said, this is what we do. And those words, this is what we do. So we have to, the spiritual master is always encouraging the devotees in Kirtan. Sri Vigraha Anichanana, spiritual master is encouraging his disciples to worship the Vigraha, the deity of the Supreme Lord. And in many temples, the deity was started with Panchatattva. In Prabhupada village, we had Panchatattva for 15 years. Now we have Gornitai, part of Panchatattva. We're a little hesitant to go beyond that. So, and Chatur Vidha Sri Bhagavat Prasad, the 4th verse, spiritual master is teaching the disciples how to offer 4 kinds of foodstuffs, and encouraging them to offer and honor those foodstuffs to the Supreme Lord. And the 5th qualification, Sri Radhika Madhava Yorapara, the spiritual master is always relishing the nectars, the mellow of the spiritual, the Radha and Krishna's pastimes. He's absorbed in that. He's not on the Facebook or, you know, I mean, there's certainly some good things on the internet, but he doesn't spend his time in Prajalpa. You know, he's relishing the mellows and pastimes. And Nikunjayuno Ratikeli Siddhya, the spiritual master is actually busy making tasteful arrangements for the worship of Radha and Krishna. And Sakshat Hari Tvena, it says in our Shastra, the spiritual master should be worshipped on the same level as Krishna, because he's delivering Krishna. And then Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasada, it's by the mercy of Krishna one gets a spiritual master, and by the mercy of the spiritual master one can get Krishna. So these are just 8 essential elementary qualities for a spiritual master. And then beyond that, then there's authority. One has to get the instruction. One has to be authorized by his spiritual master. And we know in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's that verse. Did you just read it this morning? When Lord Chaitanya, he has instructed everyone to become a guru. Yeah, so we have that instruction. So we have to take that I have to become, not necessarily to initiate people, but I have to become a teacher by example. Acharya is the word that's used in that verse. Acharya means teacher by example. Some people can give it good instructions, but perhaps their personal lifestyle is not that good. But in Krishna consciousness, we're encouraged to become acharyas, to become, first you act properly, and then because your actions speak louder than your words, you know, so we're encouraged to act properly. Anyone have any questions up to this point? Comments, corrections?
So I think you raised the doubt, I'm not sure if it addressed that. How is it that Sukadeva Goswami is not committing this Maryada Vatikrama?
How is it that he's not?
He's not committing this Maryada Vatikrama. He has so many 11 members in the assembly, but he's the one who's taking the role of instructing and then asking them to instruct.
Well, Sukadeva Goswami is not an ordinary person, as you all know. He stayed in the womb of his mother until he was 16, and when he left home, he left with no clothes, just walking, and his father Vyasadeva was following him. And at one point, I hope I don't go too far off track. At one point, he walked by a pool, a place where some ladies were bathing, and they didn't even, practically, they could tell he was not interested in anything. But when Srila Vyasadeva came, they all covered their bodies out of Sukadeva Goswami. He was very clearly on the transcendental platform. He didn't see. He didn't. Sukadeva Goswami was not seen as most conditioned souls, as I do. I still see, male, female. I still have desires and attractions for things in this material world. Sukadeva Goswami was completely different. So when he arrived in Naimisharanya, when he arrived in front of Maharaj Parikshit, he was just requested to speak. And you want to comment or add to that? Like why and how is he not committing this Maryada Yati Krama?
Well, I appreciate the question and from your response. And it's a good question. And Sukadeva Goswami is, of course, completely transcendental. And one could say, well, Sri Uddhava is completely transcendental. And then now, okay, in one sense, so with Sukadeva Goswami, there was Vyasadeva, there was Narada Muni, there was Agastya Muni, there was all these sages, and like this group, hundreds or thousands of sages from around the universe. It seems they insisted, they were insisting. So here we can say we have Vidura really wanting Uddhava, but there at the bank of the Ganges with Sukadeva Goswami is the group is insisting that you're the one who's meant to speak here. And it seems like it's more in the meta view. Okay, so there's these etiquette principles. There's these etiquette principles. And ultimately etiquette's not meant to be like a barrier to exchange of transcendental knowledge, but rather it's meant to facilitate it. So the etiquette principles, these are not absolute. And so realized souls with spiritual intelligence, they apply and integrate those principles according to time and circumstance. And so clearly, you see here, like, okay, so like Uddhava is declining to, of course, he's already speaking to Maitreya for 3.5 chapters. He's already speaking to Vidura for 3.5 chapters, so he is giving transcendental knowledge. As far as continuing for the remaining 29 chapters of this canto and then the whole 31 chapters of Canto 4. Okay, the Maryada Vyatikrama, that's one principle, but it's not the only principle. Uddhava also knows that it's his service to go towards Bhadavik Ashram, and it's, you know, like, so like in the context of knowing what his service is, then this is one principle. So these etiquette principles, they're not like meant to be blindly followed absolutely. And in the case of Shukadeva Goswami, my understanding is like all of the sages there, they knew, and Shukadeva Goswami knew that it would be a sort of niyamagraha, you know, just kind of like following some rule without getting the essence. And the essence there is Shukadeva Goswami, for the good of us, for the good of all the souls in the Kali Yuga for hundreds of thousands of years, Shukadeva Goswami is meant to be the prime speaker of Bhagavatam. So those are some principles that come to mind.
Yes,
Can I add something?
Yeah.
It seems also that if Maitreya was present at the time when Vidura asked, and Uddhava would have said, no, I want you to hear from Maitreya. But Maitreya Rishi, if Maitreya Rishi had chosen, no, you, Uddhava, is the one who is speaking to Vidura, because I know in my heart you're supposed to be the speaker, then it will be the same situation then on the bank of the Ganges when Maharaj Parikshit left. But when Maharaj Parikshit was there, they were not moving. You know, they were so senior, like Nada Muni and Vyasadeva, and, you know, in a sense, Sukadeva Goswami received the knowledge from Vyasadeva. So it's like even bigger offenses because he received the knowledge from Vyasadeva. But they were sitting and they were not moving. None of them were approaching Maharaj Parikshit, they were just there, waiting. And then as soon as Sukadeva Goswami came naked and with kids around, you know, teasing him, he arrived on the scene, everyone knew this is the speaker. And they all like bowed down or offer obeisances. They knew that it was a speaker and there was no etiquette on that level in their heart, super soul, by the arrangement of destiny, by the arrangement of Krishna. And here in the arrangement of Krishna, it seems that at one point, I think somewhere they said that it's true that Krishna was speaking with Uddhava, but really he was giving the instruction to Maitreya Rishi, because Uddhava, in a sense, he knew all that. But Maitreya Rishi was purified by that association with Krishna. And then he was the one who was supposed to speak to Vidura and then compile those chapters about Bhagavatam. Yeah.
One should never pass over the honor due to an elderly spiritual master, teacher in the interests of one's own personal gain and fame. So this is an instruction for all of us, that when like many may remember when they first met devotees, or when in the early days of Krishna consciousness in North America, when you meet someone on the street, your whole thing is, oh, you got to come back to the temple. There's this sannyasi, and when you always want to introduce someone to someone that you felt was a little more senior, that had some realization. So.
That happened today with my husband, Manan's here.
And who else?
That's exactly why Manan here today, because he was staying with me at Prabhupada's house and said, I need to introduce you to some people who are more senior, more knowledgeable. So that's not.
Yeah, this is a process. Yes, Monica?
You know,
It's okay. Respond. I have a question.
Okay.
It's from the purport. I read that purport. Is there also a thing in the purport that says like they had the same knowledge to give? So if they are on the same level and there is a young person and an older person, then the older person will be chosen. There's something like that in this purport or the previous purport.
Yeah, and this one here, it says, since both Uddhava and Maitreya were directly instructed by the Lord, both had the authority to become the spiritual master of Vidura or anyone else. But Maitreya, being elderly, had the first claim for becoming the spiritual master. So because of age, even though Uddhava was 100%, 100% pure devotee, Maitreya was a transcendentalist and certainly a wonderful devotee, but Uddhava is described as a pure devotee. Any other comments or?
Well, as you just indicated, so Prabhupada stressing. Understand how to apply these principles. Prabhupada stressing about profit, adoration, and distinction, personal gain and fame. So that's what, yeah. So that's like the etiquette's meant to kind of check that and to get an opportunity to check. Oh, I want to show how smart I am. I want to show how learned I am. But then, there's someone elder. So then, like it's a way to contain those propensities for the anartas, for the unwanted things in the heart. And we can see, like, sure, Prabhupada's giving these ethical principles, but also like in what Prabhupada set up, let's say there would be like often let's say there's a temple president who's younger, and then his or her service is to manage things, sometimes give classes to those who are elder. And of course we should look at, what are the weeds? Are there desires for gain, fame, adoration, distinction? At the same time, that's not meant to I'm not meant to use that to prevent me to do my service. And sometimes my service, your service, sometimes our service will involve not violating these etiquette principles, but crossing some boundaries. So I'm just following up on what you shared, that kind of like that etiquette principle. It's meant to support us to notice and pull the weeds in our heart, and to support us.
Any other comments?
I was thinking about what you said about the guru, like we all supposed to be gurus, and the expression like too many cooks in the kitchen. I wonder like how would that apply in that, in many situations.
How does it apply?
Yeah, how we may.
As followers of Srila Prabhupada, we're all meant to distribute what we've seen from him. And the best way to distribute it is first to live it. We have to become a devotee. We have to live like a devotee, talk like a devotee, eat like a devotee, sleep like a devotee. And whatever we do, we have to become a teacher by example. And too many cooks in the kitchen spoil. If we have all good examples around us, that couldn't spoil anything. It's only when there's some disagreement. It's only when one of them thinks they're superior somehow, which is again fame, adoration, distinction, when one of them wants to be recognized as some superior person. But at least in mission that Srila Prabhupada set up, he has said that many different quotes, the Acharya should always be in the center. We've all seen, this Prabhu mentioned last night, on every piece of letterhead that Prabhupada had, it said founder Acharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There was a problem at the, some of you may recall, 30 years ago in Detroit, on the front of the temple, the Fisher Mansion, there was a big sign in A.C. Bhaktivedanta, and someone took this founder Acharya, and they took Prabhupada's name. It was a big problem. A lot of people complained about it. I think they put it back eventually, but if we can remember that, we have a guru, and it's just like for a woman has one husband. She can have great respect for all the other men in the world. Yes, Prabhu, yes, she can have great respect for all the Prabhu, but she has one husband. So as devotees, we sing this mantra before Bhagavad Gita, Bande Ham Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. I offer my Gurun is plural for gurus. I offer my obeisances to all the Vaishnava gurus, but we have one guru. We have one Acharya, and at least if anyone claims to be an ISKCON, there's an Acharya for this institution, which is Srila Prabhupada. And, so having many other people that are setting a good example is okay, but when someone wants to sit in his position, when somebody that makes an undesirable situation, as some of you may have seen already.
Thanks for that.
There's a story, some of you, probably most of you have heard about the cobbler and the Brahmana. Anyone heard that? No? Okay, so I won't.
Yeah, there is one person who did it, so it's a good story.
There was one of the sages amongst devotees. He's sitting here with the Veena. His name is Narada Muni. He was traveling. He was on his way to the spiritual world to see Lord Krishna, and on the way there, he met a Brahmana. A Brahmana is someone who practices so many ritualistic ceremonies. They're spiritually minded people, but they practice all the ritualistic ceremonies. And he saw Narada Muni and said, "Oh, great, Narada Muni, where are you going?" He said, "Oh, I'm going to see Krishna." He said, "Oh, and when you see Krishna, can you ask him, when will I get liberation? How soon will I be able to go back, to the eternal spiritual world?" So Narada said, "Yes, sure, I will ask Krishna, and when I come back, I'll tell you what he said." And he continues, and a little while later, he met a cobbler. Just a cobbler, very humble person. He fixes shoes for people, sewing shoes together out of leather. Very humble person, but he was actually a Vaishnava. His heart was softened. He was so he saw Narada Muni, immediately offered his obeisances. "Oh, great sage. Where are you going? How can I serve you?" So he says, "Oh, I'm going to see Krishna in the spiritual world." So he says, "Oh, when you see Krishna, can you ask him when I will be able to go to the spiritual world to get his association?" And so Narada Muni continued. He went on. He saw Krishna, and he went to the spiritual world. He saw Krishna and did what he had to do. And then he says, "Oh, when I was on my way, I met a Brahmana. And the Brahmana asked me, when you see Krishna, ask him how long I will be here. How soon can I go back to the spiritual world and get liberation?" And he said, "Oh, tell the Brahmana after another 100,000 lifetimes." Come back. And he said, "Really, the Brahmana?" And then he said, "Oh, I also met a cobbler." and the cobbler also wants to know when he can go back. And Krishna said, "At the end of this life, you will come back to me." And Narada was very surprised. How is that so? He said, well, when you see the cobbler, if the Brahmana or the cobbler asked you what I was doing, if they ask you what I was doing when you saw me, tell them I was busy threading an elephant. Is it an elephant? Through the eye of a needle. And Narada said, oh, okay. Okay, so he left, offered respects to Krishna. Then when he came back, he saw the Brahmana, and the Brahmana said, oh, did you see my Supreme Lord, Krishna? And he said, yes, I saw him. He said, so what did he say? When will I go back to the spiritual world? He said, another 100,000 lifetimes. And the Brahmana, 100,000 lifetimes. I'm such a wonderful, exalted soul. How could it take so long? And what was Krishna doing anyway when you saw him? He was busy threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. And so the Brahmana said, that's impossible. Who can put an elephant through the eye of a needle? And he just rejected it. And then Narada could see that he doesn't quite have so much faith, because Krishna can do anything. He lifted Govardhan Hill on the pinky of his left hand, you know. So then Narada went a little further and he saw the cobbler. Cobbler was very respectful. Oh, did you see my Lord Krishna? And he said, yes, I saw Krishna. Well, what did he tell you? When can I go back? And Narada Muni said, at the end of this life, you will go home. And the cobbler was in total ecstasy. I'm so happy. Oh, thank you so much. And what was Krishna doing when you saw him? And the cobbler said, he was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. And the cobbler started crying and said, Krishna is so wonderful. He was in total ecstasy. And Narada said, aren't you a little concerned? I mean, how can someone put an elephant through the eye of a needle? Krishna, if he can put a big banyan tree in a little tiny seed, why can't he put an elephant through the eye of a needle? Krishna can do anything. So I just thought of that story because of one's external situation. One may be a Brahmana, very expert in chanting mantras. He may have some tremendous academic qualification. He may be doing fire yagyas and, you know, all kinds of sacrifices. But if one is not a Vaishnava, they're just ritualistic ceremonies. So although devotees of Krishna, we do some ceremonies. Like the main sacrifice that devotees do is called japa. You've seen these beads before? We have these beads in Bhagavad Gita. This is the essential of sacrifice. What does Krishna say of sacrifices?
And japa.
Yeah, so this is sacrifice. It's a ritualistic sacrifice. That's what we do. So we do some sacrifices, but there's a motive behind it, and we do it to get Krishna. We do these sacrifices because our spiritual master has asked us to. We're not doing them just for some fame, adoration, or distinction. That I have to do that just because we have to do it. Of course, for a disciple, he follows the order of the spiritual master. Whatever the guru asks us, we do, simply for that reason. But anything Prabhupada has asked the devotees to do is for our own personal purification and benefit. Prabhupada didn't ask us to do anything for him personally. He didn't want anything for himself. Prabhupada was extremely humble. I've heard that in the early days in New York, Prabhupada waited online to use the bathroom. He didn't request anything special for himself. But once devotees understood a little bit what a pure devotee is, then they begin to offer some very special respect and appreciation and worship of the spiritual master. So, the Brahmin and the cobbler, I thought of that story because just because someone has some official position as a Brahmana or a priest, that doesn't automatically mean that they're on the elevated platform. This is why in the Shastra, we're encouraged to be acharya, which means teacher by example. This is why Lord Rishabdev said, if you cannot deliver your dependence from the cycle of birth and death, don't become a mother, a father, or a teacher or guru. I was, as a brahmachari, whenever I thought about getting married, I would always read that verse. I can't do it. No, I'm not getting married. And then after a while, I thought, well, all I have to do is repeat what Prabhupada said, and then I can deliver people. But if you say one word, if you speculate at all, and this is why even when someone's unqualified like myself, if you're speaking in front of an assembly that has some nice Vaishnavas there, we count on them to correct us, to say, Prabhu, that's very nice, but really that was a little bit off on that. I heard someone giving a class once. They were saying, Jnana and Vairagya, knowledge and renunciation. This is how you get bhakti. Jnana and Vairagya, you cultivate renunciation and cultivate knowledge, and then you get bhakti. And it's all Sanskrit, it sounds good, but that's not our philosophy. If you get bhakti, you get love. And of course, we have to read these books, we have to study, we have to act a little renounce. But what we're really looking for is bhakti. And then by bhakti, you'll get Krishna. And he will give, we can study, we can get a lot of knowledge. But once you get Krishna, then he gives you the knowledge. Because this is how real knowledge comes. Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam. What's the English for that verse?
Those who are constantly
Devoted.
devoted to me, I give them understanding by which you can come to me.
Yeah. So to get that understanding, we have to study, but really to come to Krishna, he's the one that's going to he's going to give it to us at some point. We have to have faith. Don't have it yet, but at some point, if we can, if our heart softens to the point when we're chanting the holy name and there's actually tears, if we come to that point, then Krishna is he's gonna give you the understanding. We can't get it independently. Anyone have any more comments? Hope I didn't go too far.
It seems that to get the understanding from Krishna, we also need to be in a place where we don't want the understanding.
Where we went?
It seems that what you were saying, I experienced like it was a desire to understand. Maybe it's still a personal desire, and like what I'm understanding from what you're saying is like the love and devotion. And then Krishna gives us an understanding by which we can come to him. But it's not, the desire to know is not the motivator. Even so Krishna gives the knowledge, the motivator, like it's devotion. I appreciate that.
Another thing I just came into my mind when we speak is etiquette in devotional service. But the most exalted devotees don't necessarily follow the etiquette. Like there was a time, I believe it's in the Krishna book, where Lord Krishna had a headache, and he asked one of his devotees, Narada Muni, go get the dust from the feet of my devotees, because if I get that dust, if I put it on my head, the headache will go away. So he went out asking the Brahmanas, can I have some dust from your feet? What do you need that for? Oh, it's for Krishna's headache. Oh, no. He asked all the Brahmanas, can I have some dust from your feet? Because I wanted for Krishna's head. They all rejected him. And he went to the gopis in Vrindavan. Can I have the dust from your feet? What's it for? Krishna has a headache. He wants the dust. They said, oh, take all the dust you want, take it. Because by putting the dust of your feet, or even pointing your feet when we sit in the temple, we're advised we don't point our feet toward the deities. It's very offensive. So you'd never think of putting the dust of your feet on the deity. It's very offensive. But when Krishna asked the gopis, or when Narada asked the gopis, I need the dust from your feet. And they said, oh, take it. And he said, aren't you a little concerned that that's going to be a big offense?
You'll suffer in hell.
You'll suffer in hell. I said, oh, well, we'll go to hell forever. If Krishna's headache will be finished, we'll go to hell forever. We don't mind anything. If Krishna will be pleased, then a devotee will do anything. That's why there's devotees who have been preaching, like you look in Srila Prabhupada's life, peacefully living in Vrindavan, Radha Damodar, could have stayed there, went back to Godhead. But instead, he came to this very hellish place, New York City, the Bowery. That's like the bowels of the universe. the worst, it's terrible. I grew up in New York, and it's a terrible place. You know, it's filthy, ugly, the air is bad, and everything about it. You know, but he went there. Why? Because to please his spiritual master. Spiritual master asked him to deliver his Krishna consciousness. Another thing about younger versus older people and how the etiquette isn't always followed. Srila Prabhupada was one of the youngest. When he met Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, Sridhar Swami and others, that they were already sannyas. Prabhupada was just a young man. He was the youngest, but he's practically like Sukadeva Goswami, because when he got 64 years old, he came to the US 1965 and 69 years old. And look what he did. So, did you have a question?
Yes, when I first came in. And then later you were talking about in order to be a teacher, one needs to be able to deliver his dependence, and just now you're using the word delivering again. Jai Chaitanya was just here from Bangalore, and he was talking, you were there last night, yes, and he was talking about Srila Prabhupada's position as being able to reach everyone, at least to get everyone to admit that Srila Prabhupada is the deliverer. Could you expand on that a little bit?
The deliverer
Of everyone. His position, at least in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, that try and get across this concept, and I wanted to hear more about
that. Well, it's we have this word removed in initiation called Divya Gyan or Diksha. The Diksha Guru is the one who delivers Divya Gyan, transcendental knowledge. And at least for anyone who's been in ISKCON, anyone who's read Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada is clearly the source of Divya Gyan. You know, I might have a temple president, or there might be some, elderly devotee that gives a class, and they're trying to give a class or explain something. But what the foundation, the Divya Gyan, everything is coming out of Prabhupada's books. Actually, there's an old friend of mine, some of you may know him, named Gorsundar. He lives in Alachua now. He was one of Prabhupada's early disciples, and he.
Sundar, who opened up the Hawaiian.
Yeah, he was.
This is excellent.
Yeah, now he's married to Gaia. But anyway, I'd go to visit him now because he's very sick. But he had written a book, I think in 72 or 73, a small book called The Ontological Primer, and another book called Krishnology. And I remember clearly on the back cover is a picture of Prabhupada, and it says, anyone who claims to know anything at all about Krishna must have learned it from Srila Prabhupada.
Madhuha used that phrase, and he quoted Gorsundar in his Vyas Puja offering in
Recently?
1974.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, that was the last line. Anyone who knows anything about Krishna, what's under says. And he said that line, and then Srila Prabhupada wrote in the letter and said, yours is the first class. Yes, Puja offering, but that was the last line of this yes Puja.
So, and if we, it's claims part of ISKCON, or if they know anything about Krishna, Srila Prabhupada is certainly our deliverer. That just like a woman, a lady has great respect for all the men, but she has one husband. And the husband is obviously treated differently. Other men you can be very respectful to. Very respectful to all the men. They're all wonderful Prabhus, but she only has one husband, and she has a certain special relationship with that person. It's the same way we could take good instruction, good advice, we can hear from many people, but if there's going to be a deliverer, certainly it's Srila Prabhupada. I mean, otherwise, where are they delivering us to? What is their, if they're delivering us to Srila Prabhupada, okay, they can take us to Srila Prabhupada. But if they're taking us anyplace else, and even Srila Prabhupada, by his example, he would ask some devotees to get service and say, you will get the blessings of my guru 100 times. They say that when devotees open a temple in a foreign country or something.
The grandfather is more kind than the father. Stuff like that. I think this relates to Mother Mallory's comment about the too many cooks. So like it's so all the cooks are expert, and the expert just means I'm just sincerely trying to assist Srila Prabhupada in preaching, not even that I'm preaching, but I'm assisting Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada said that your love for me is shown by how well you cooperate, so that if all the cooks are cooperating to support a person to develop their personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada as their most important relationship in existence, then it's all synergistic. Then it's like have the pebble in the pond, and then if all the pebbles have the same center, then there's resonant concentric waves. And so that's you mentioned like the distinction between like guru in the singular and guru in the plural. So Krishna Badesh, we're all meant to be teachers, gurus. And we mentioned this yesterday, like for myself, the way I endeavor to be teacher, guru, is to support people, to connect personally and directly with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is the main Vaishnava, giving them transformational, transcendental knowledge, and in the most personal way. We made this distinction yesterday in the class at Malini's place. So it could seem subtle, abstract, but it's such a vital distinction. Not that like, I'll be your link to Prabhupada. That's different than right. And through me, that's different than I'm enthusiastic to play a role in your life, to support you, to connect with Srila Prabhupada as your personal, direct, current, living link to Sri Krishna's parampara. And as long as all of the 2, 3, 10, 30, 300 Siksha gurus are supporting someone to develop that direct personal living link with Srila Prabhupada, then it's all auspicious. And even if the attempt at guidance, even if sometimes it's not always aligned, well, that's it. So then like for each follower of Prabhupada, then it's their responsibility to their responsibility on the foundation there, or on the foundation of our personal relationship with Prabhupada, to I'll consider carefully what you have said. It might be this well-meaning follower of Prabhupada, this well-meaning follower of Prabhupada, and maybe their guidance, their advice is okay. So we're like, ultimately I'm responsible. Like, yeah, what does Srila Prabhupada want from me, so that everyone is, and Prabhupada wants all his followers to be independently thoughtful, so that I loved in your class how you went through each of the 8 stanzas of Gauravastakam. I found that very wonderful. So that last stanza, Yasya Prashada, Bhagavat Prashada, Yasya Prashada, Nagati Topi, Yamostivam, Yasya. So again, like there might be so many gurus in the plural, but then Srila Prabhupada is the guru in the singular, meaning like the guru, and without whose grace we're finished. The guru without whose, and so for someone to be delivered, for someone to make progress and advancement, means that relationship is secure and solid. And on the foundation of that relationship, well, here's this Prabhu who inspires me, this Mataji who gives classes, and this Pujari, and they're all our gurus. And I process and relate to all of them on the foundation of how to process the different examples, the teachings from different gurus, how to process it and relate to it in a way that I'm strengthened in that most important spiritual relationship, my relation with Srila Prabhupada, because these other gurus, I can think I've had different teachers. And just to demystify, guru basically means teacher. As we get to the meaning, guru actually means heavy, right? Like if we're getting like real spiritual guidance, like I know if I'm paying attention and reading Prabhupada's books, it's heavy. Like I'm looking at myself in the mirror. Okay. So if I look over the maybe about 43 years, I've had so many who have inspired me in my spiritual life. They're all my teachers, and so I'm forever indebted to them. And some of them maybe took their life in different ways, or they went in ways that like I'm not inspired anymore. Okay, and that doesn't need to be a problem, because it's not like they are the guru without whose grace I'm finished, the teacher without whose grace I'm finished. That's Srila Prabhupada, and everything else supports that. And as long as in our attempts to receive transcendental knowledge and share it, as long as we like see it's vital to keep front and center that the essence here is emphasizing the direct personal living relationship with Srila Prabhupada. Then the more cooks, the better. Hare Krishna.
More cooks, the better.
Mananjini has it.
Hare Krishna. I have a question, and that's around, like, so Srila Prabhupada encourages to become spiritual masters, like not in the sense of sharing transcendental knowledge. And at the beginning, you mentioned something like to be authorized to become a spiritual master. And I'm curious, like, how do I know I'm authorized? Like, what's the, yeah, that's my question.
Well, you're authorized by, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya advises all of us to be acharya. I think I use the word authorized in relation to if one's going to formally initiate or do something like that, he would need to be authorized.
Like guru in the singular.
If to be guru in the singular, like dear Govinda was just mentioning, that the guru that without whom we just can't make it. the initiator or the deliverer of Guru. One needs to be authorized in that, but I believe we're all authorized from Chaitanya Charitamrita to become an acharya. We're encouraged, not that you are an acharya, but we're encouraged to become acharya, which means teacher by example. We're encouraged to follow the process nicely and by our example, help others and encourage and inspire others to follow the process. Like in many initiation letters, Prabhupada wrote the temple presidents, and these are the names of the new people I'm accepting as disciples, and please see that they are doing as you are doing. When Prabhupada wrote some letters about Gurukula, because people would ask, they would write letters to Prabhupada, what kind of special classes should we have for the children, like special training? Yes, they should do as you are doing. Rise early, hear the Srimad Bhagavatam every day. He didn't really distinguish very much. You know, he said, yes, they should do as you are. He wanted all of us to follow very simple process. May not be easy, but simple. Hearing and chanting, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, practicing devotional service. And that I remember reading so many times, they should do as you are doing. So we're encouraged not just to talk the philosophy, we have to do that. We have to speak the philosophy, talk the philosophy, but we have to, walk the walk.
Walk the talk.
Walk the talk. Yeah, we have to practice. If we're not practicing, our words will not have the same potency. So you are authorized to become, a teacher, an example for your family, for your friends, for everyone around us.
Yeah, the guru in the plural. Once we stand, I'm aspire to follow God, especially if one of them in my vows of initiation. Then you're authorized. You're authorized in that declaration, in that stand, authorized by Prabhupada and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to share transcendental knowledge, to share Krishna consciousness with whomever you meet, whether it's in terms of, it could be in the form of saying hello, it could be in the form of, through our occupation, in the form of Bhagavad Gita, Kirtan, distributing prasad, but that whoever we connect, whoever we connect with, we're authorized somehow or other to create spiritual value. So that's, and in that way, we're guru in the plural. And then the guru in the singular, then that's the particular order that Madhuha Prabhu is referring to.
Yes.
I was thinking that authorized doesn't mean qualified. And after those two conversations, I think it really connect together. Mozarjana's comment about Prabhupada is the deliverer. So Prabhupada is the deliverer. He authorizes us to speak as he speaks and to follow his process. But doesn't make us qualified. Like, we are not qualified to serve anyone, really. We all struggle with, like material consciousness, and authorizes and qualified. And I think to make those distinctions is empowering, because we're authorized, and then the real deliverer or the real practice that come to people, that deliver people, that brings them in the program, that brings them to follow Srila Prabhupada. Because often I think like of, you're in contact with a lot of devotees who have huge preaching program, huge, like 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 of people are touched by their preaching programs. And they are authorized by Srila Prabhupada. And the deliverer is Srila Prabhupada, whether or not people know it. It is always the deliverer.
And they're authorized, like Arjuna, he was authorized to be a super warrior. And then, Krishna took that away from him. And then, so any moment, Srila Prabhupada could stop authorizing those big preachers. And then, they won't be able to do anything. But Prabhupada is authorizing and is a deliverer. So I like the two combined conversation.
Any other final comments? Corrections, questions? Thank you. Hare Krishna. Maybe we can read the verse just one more time.
Yeah.
Sri Uddhava said, "You may take lessons from the great learned sage Maitreya, who was nearby and who was worshipable for reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by the personality of Godhead while he was about to quit this mortal world." Srimad Bhagavatam.
Jai.
With all that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madhuha Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.